Berlin, April 1945. In the twilight of the war, the heart of the Third Reich beat among ruins and smoke. The German capital was encircled. Every street had turned into a battlefield. Every building into an improvised fortress. While Adolf Hitler awaited his end in the bunker beneath the Chancellery, Soviet troops under Marshal Georgy Zhukov prepared for the final offensive. The objective was not simply military, but symbolic. To seize the Reichstag. Taking it meant delivering the final blow. On April 16, 1945, the Red Army launched the last great offensive in Europe, the assault on Berlin. Under the orders of Zhukov and Konev, more than 2 million soldiers advanced with unprecedented firepower. Backed by 6,000 tanks, 40,000 artillery pieces, and an air force that bombed without respite. Before dawn, Soviet artillery unleashed more than half an hour of relentless punishment on the German positions. The ground shook as if it were collapsing under their boots, while the defensive lines were blinded by dust, smoke, and shrapnel. Facing them, the defenders were a worn-out, uneven mosaic. The Wehrmacht arrived exhausted after years of campaigning. The Waffen-SS defended every meter with fanaticism. The Volkssturm, elderly men and teenagers from the Hitler Youth, received outdated rifles and the order not to give ground. Berlin filled with improvised barricades, machine gun nests in basements, and snipers posted in attics. The capital stopped being a city and became a death trap. The streets turned into hell. Soviet tanks advanced cautiously among mountains of rubble, firing at buildings occupied by gunmen. The thunder of grenades echoed down avenues ripped open like wounds. In basements and subway stations, civilians waited in the dark while the walls shook with every impact. Many were buried alive. Others died of hunger or in the crossfire. Day after day, the flames gained ground, and Berlin burned a little more. By April the 25th, Berlin was completely surrounded. Zhukov and Konev had closed the ring, splitting the defenses into small, isolated sectors that fought without communication with one another. From that moment on, the fall was only a matter of time. Even so, the resistance was ferocious. Boys barely 15 years old aimed Panzerfausts at Soviet armor. Women armed with pistols patrolled ruins turned into trenches. Every corner was contested with extreme violence, as if stretching out the suffering could somehow change the inevitable. In the heart of the city, near the Brandenburg Gate, fighting raged house by house. The Chancellery was encircled, and inside, Hitler wasted away amid delusions and impossible orders. On April 30th, convinced that everything was lost, the Führer made his final decision. He knew he could not be taken alive. he understood what awaited him if he were taken prisoner. The only alternative left to him was to answer for his crimes at the barrel of a pistol he held in his own hand. He shot himself in the temple beside his brand new wife, Eva Braun. That was the end of the Nazi leader, but outside, the fight went on. Colonel Helmuth Weidling, responsible for the defense of Berlin, understood the futility of continuing to fight. Reserves were exhausted, ammunition was almost gone, and the Red Army already controlled most of the city. It was only a matter of time before Weidling ordered unconditional surrender. But before that could happen, the Soviets had already set their sights on the supreme symbol of their victory. The Reichstag, that blackened, shattered mass, would become the last fortress of Nazism, a stage on which history would be written with fire, blood, and propaganda. The Red Army launched its final assault on the Reichstag, while Adolf Hitler's body was still burning in the Chancellery Gardens that April 30th. For Stalin, that building was not simply a strategic objective. It was the ultimate trophy. Although it had not functioned as a parliament for more than a decade, in the eyes of the world it represented the political heart of the Reich. Conquering its ruins was equivalent to proving to the entire world that Nazism had been reduced to ashes. The attack began with a devastating bombardment. For hours, Soviet guns pounded the building and its surroundings. Smoke covered the sky, walls cracked, and columns trembled. But when the soldiers tried to advance, they ran into hell. Inside, the defenders had turned every room into a strong point. Remnants of the Wehrmacht, SS units, and armed policemen knew the symbolic value of the building all too well. That is why they dug in along the corridors, basements, and windows, ready to die within its blackened walls. The fighting became a slaughter. Every meter gained by the Soviets cost dozens of lives. Machine guns fired from the shadows, grenades rolled down staircases, snipers hunted from the rooftops. The T-34 tanks, unable to maneuver among the ruins, fired at point-blank range into the facades. The echo was deafening. It is estimated that on that first day alone, at least 2,000 Soviet soldiers died trying to seize the Reichstag. The price of each advance was so high that some officers compared it to a miniature Stalingrad. Casualties piled up, but the order was clear. The red flag had to fly over the dome, no matter the cost. Night fell, and the fighting did not stop. The Soviets managed to break into several rooms, lit only by the flicker of the flames. The interior of the building was a maze of smoke, dust, and corpses. The air became unbreathable. In a desperate attempt to seal victory, some soldiers climbed up to the higher levels and, under crossfire, placed an improvised red flag. It was a daring act, but not a definitive one. The Reichstag was still not secured. Throughout May 1st, the battle continued, the exhausted German defenders still resisted from basements and piles of rubble. Every corner had to be cleared with blood and fire. Only in the early hours of May 2nd did the last survivors surrender. The Reichstag finally fell into Soviet hands, mutilated by artillery, covered in ruins and stained with the blood of thousands of men. The fall of the building was not just a military victory, it was a ritual act. There ended the myth of the thousand-year Reich. And in those ruins, the Red Army found the perfect stage for its own legend.
German government buildings, the Reichstag, Hitler's palace, the Reichschancellery have been battered into ruin by Russian field guns and RAF bombers. The Adlon houses Red Army men, and the Wilhelmstrasse is a street of empty husks of buildings.
Thus, on May 2nd, 1945, amid still smoldering smoke and the echoes of isolated gunshots, a group of Soviet soldiers raised the red flag over the Reichstag. It was not the first time. Days earlier, the banner had been placed, improvised, on top of the building. But something was different now. No enemies remained standing to destroy the symbol of the Soviet Union, and it would no longer be hidden in the darkness. That morning, after the defenders' surrender, that blazing piece of cloth in the colors of the USSR could be planted without opposition and for good. Its symbolic value lay in that moment, because what the Soviets sought was not only to capture a building. They needed an image that condensed victory into a single instant. Military photographer Yevgeny Kaldai was the man in charge of creating that immortal scene. He had arrived in Berlin with a clear mission: to capture the photograph that would symbolize the defeat of Nazism. Kaldai carried with him a flag handcrafted from 3 red tablecloths sewn together by his uncle. That improvisation did not matter. What mattered was the message it would send to the world. With the flag under his arm and his camera ready, he accompanied a group of soldiers to the top of the Reichstag. The shot was not spontaneous. In fact, Kaldai asked the soldiers to pose, to raise the flag and to hold it so that the wind would unfurl it dramatically over the ruins. The result was a carefully staged scene. 2 fighters, one supporting the other as they planted the Soviet standard over the remains of the building. The smoke of battle still covered the sky, and the destroyed city stretched out in the background. The photo became an instant icon, but it also carried an element of manipulation. When developing the images, Kaldai realized that one of the soldiers holding the flag wore 2 watches on his wrist, suggesting looting. To avoid an uncomfortable controversy, the photographer retouched the picture and removed one of them. He also intensified the smoke in the sky, adding drama and reinforcing the epic atmosphere of the moment. What remained was not a simple documentary record, but a symbolic construction designed to convey the greatness of Soviet victory. For decades, the photo was reproduced in newspapers, murals, history books, and propaganda posters. For the Soviets, that flag waving over the Reichstag was the confirmation that the sacrifice of millions of soldiers had not been in vain. It was the visual answer to Nazi barbarism, a reminder that Moscow, Leningrad, and Stalingrad had been avenged in the enemy capital itself. However, the image also embodied the weight of propaganda. In reality, the war had ended in the midst of an ocean of devastation. Berlin lay in ruins, and the fighting in the Reichstag had cost thousands of lives in barely 2 days. The flag flying above could not hide the magnitude of the tragedy, but it could transform it into a symbol. In the collective memory, the Reichstag ceased to be a half-destroyed building and became the altar where victory was sealed. The ruins remained for years, while the open spaces around the building served the hungry civilian population as land for vegetable gardens. In 1954, the authorities of West Berlin made the controversial decision to dynamite the dome, citing structural stability. In the following years, an agreement was reached for a complete restoration, even though it was still unclear what use the building would have in the new divided Germany. Eventually, time passed, the Berlin Wall fell, and the old Reichstag became the Bundestag of the new unified nation.
Une coupole de verre pour un parlement dans une Allemagne réunifiée et pacifique tournée vers le 3e millénaire, c'est le message adressé ce matin aux Allemands et au monde avec cette clé géante remise au président du Bundestag, Wolfgang Thierse. Gerhard Schröder a proclamé la nouvelle République de Berlin. Le chancelier a souligné que ce transfert du gouvernement de Bonn dans ce qui fut la capitale des Kaisers, des nazis puis des communistes, ne compromettrait en rien la continuité de la démocratie établie en Allemagne occidentale, voici un demi-siècle.
In conclusion, the Reichstag was not the scene of the last Nazi stand merely because its walls collapsed at the end, but because it embodied the very symbol of the power that was crumbling. Its fall was at once a military victory and a political ritual. It was a building transformed into an altar of defeat and a stage for propaganda. The red flag waving over its ruins sealed the end of Nazism and inaugurated a new world order. Today, its restored glass dome rises above the Bundestag, a modern reminder that even the most imposing symbols can be reduced to dust and yet be reborn as living pages of history. And so we come to the end. If you enjoyed this video, we invite you to join us in our next episode to keep discovering military history.